There it goes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to an Unearthly podcast. We weren't here last week, but we are here this week. We're going to be talking about City of Death. Myself, Mad Matt, and Randy.
And sorry about last week. We had scheduling conflicts.
Out of the clear blue, yeah.
As usual, we'll be posting this on madmaninc.wordpress.com and on Fantasy and Sci-Fi Loving News and Reviews.
As well as Twitch TV now.
we have an opening on hand?
Not particularly. Not opening theme, although I could probably pull something somewhere. I do have a actual website for remixed Doctor Who music, which I believe Randy showed me at one point.
Who mix? Yeah.
Yeah, Who mix.
Yeah.
I just can't remember where I hit it. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that site. I've known that site for years.
Actually, let's try Who mix. I think I found it. Here we go.
Yeah, that's it. Now it's apparently on a different server, but it still takes you there. Really should have had this ready beforehand, Matt. This isn't a bad mix.
Oh, it isn't. I quite
like it. If anybody does have a request that's watching for a certain opening, Matt here is in charge of our openings for our remastered episodes, so feel free to comment in the chat, or I don't know if Twitch lets you comment on videos. I know YouTube does.
I believe Twitch, there's actually a live chat for people who are watching, so... Yes, I've been busy altering stuff once in a while.
If people watch the recorded version on Twitch, can they comment?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure how that works yet. I'm still fairly new to Twitch, so
feel free to comment on that.
I think if nothing else, they can contact me and send me messages, I believe. So there's at least that.
So, shall we move on to the summary?
Yes, let's. Whose turn is it this week?
Now, you summarized last week, and I summarized the week before.
So I guess it's Bill's turn.
Bill!
I can give it a try. Alright, we started off with the Doctor and Romana, as the Doctor is trying to explain to her why physical art and Paris are important. They go into a famous Parisian museum I'm not going to try to pronounce, and look at the Mona Lisa, which again the Doctor tries to... Thank you. I'm not going to try to pronounce any French words. Leave it at
I'm on that same book too.
Once again, the Doctor is trying to explain to Romana why the Mona Lisa is important. He starts having essentially fainting spell due to... I don't think it's exactly explained at the time, but it's essentially due to time paradoxes, wibbly-wobbly stuff, and...
Time distortion.
Time distortion is what I believe.
Its presence is disorienting him. So he kind of has a fainting spell, and I believe at the same time he manages to steal a high-tech device disguised as a bracelet from one of the patrons. Am I getting that in the right order?
More or less, yes.
Yeah.
He also bumps into a guy's gun.
Bangs his head on a guy's gun. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mention this, but this is the fourth Doctor, by the way. This is a fourth Doctor episode.
This is the Doctor and the Second Romana, played by Tom Baker and Lala Ward.
They leave the museum and manage to get themselves stalked by a detective. Is it? I forget if he's caught following them for the quote-unquote bracelet, or if he suspects them of something else.
He believed to suspect them of being thieves.
Out to steal painting, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They then get accosted by a group of armed thugs that the detective believes is working for the Doctor in order to throw him off the case. Doctor is, of course, rather unhappy about this belief.
Especially since he literally had a gun pointed at him. He hates guns.
Yeah. So they end up being brought to the headquarters of the thugs and meeting the individuals that they stole the quote-unquote bracelet from, who are the ones who are actually out to steal the Mona Lisa. Around this point, I might stop getting things in quite so neat of an order, because now we're more into, we're past the setup and more into the actual plot of the episode. But essentially, we find that this is a very rich individual who is
the Count Scarlioni.
The Count is responsible for, he deals in paintings and, or very, very rare paintings. I believe
Very rare antiquities.
I believe there was a conversation earlier in the episode about how the fact that he had some role in the return of several paintings that had been missing from centuries that were then sold, was it to museums or private collections?
Something like
It's
that.
possible. I don't remember that. I do remember them talking about a Gutenberg Bible, so it's not just paintings.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's also
Well,
the
they said
hieroglyphics
they
and
said-
the...
I believe the word used was works of art. So anyway, they end up being taken prisoner by the Count, and the Doctor is constantly unhappy with the detective's attempts to escape from the clutches of the Count.
Which largely involves hitting people.
and other objects.
He explains we've
And breaking
gone
stuff. Yes.
He explained, yeah. He explains we've gone through this trouble to get to, to get captured. Why would we just escape right away instead of being taken down to where they think we're not going to escape and then escaping? The Doctor throughout this entire time makes a big show of trying to look like the dumbest man in the room, which does not fool anybody.
But is standard Doctor.
True.
I mean,
He does
it's been
put on a fair
standard
show.
technique since the second Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Look the fool, but
the
don't
Doctor-
be the fool.
Yep. The Doctor pulls out his sonic screwdriver. They escape and discover that there are 6 legit Mona Lisas that were all somehow crafted by Leonardo da Vinci, hidden within the basement. The Doctor, I'm not sure why do they explain why the Doctor leaves on his own instead of taking the others with him?
Essentially, he wanted them to try and figure out what he was up to and how he did all this, while he went off into time to try and figure out what...
They escape. They wanted those two to cover the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, which was still planning on getting stolen.
Mm-hmm.
While he knocked off to go see a Renaissance man about a painting.
Quote unquote.
And during this, we also learned that there are 7 extremely wealthy individuals who would be glad to pay exorbitant sums of money for the Mona Lisa, but obviously they won't pay for what they believe to be a fake, so the one in the Louvre has to be stolen before it can actually be sold to them.
And also to bring up the count to 7 instead of just 6.
Right.
Right.
Also, the fact that the Count has a scientist in a lab working for him who needs an exorbitant amount of money to do some bizarre experiments with time.
Hence why we were getting the time hiccups earlier.
very, very interesting time experiments that will allow something to age without having to consume any sort of nutrients. But
it didn't quite.
Doctor Who isn't exactly a physics and biology show.
Well, there's that, and also the fact that the experiment did not allow for, shall we say, putting on the brakes and letting it out of that time.
Right.
It didn't allow. It created two different time streams, and you couldn't cross from A to B. There was no interface.
I love how we take my riff that the episode doesn't actually care about, and you got to go ahead and explain the one that the episode actually does care about before I get to it. But considering I was kind of not explaining the subplot yet, that makes sense.
Well, it was revealed around the same time.
Yeah.
Right. This is the kind of thing about this subplot is that I believe the Count he either needed the Doctor's help or had his own idea that he pushed through that would eventually allow them to break out of the time stream created by the device, but it required extreme amounts of power.
Something like that.
So the Doctor finds himself back in time and finds himself face to face with the Count, who recognizes him, and both of them would like the other to explain what they're doing there.
Oh, we should also mention by this point it had been revealed that the Count had taken off his mask and revealed himself to be a one-eyed, many green tentacled alien thingy.
I forget what race he's supposed to be, but
because we're already in the summary for I think it's episode 2 or 3, and that was revealed at the end of episode 1.
I can't remember what race they're supposed to be.
Because I'm going to talk about this later. There will be a test.
I can't remember what race he's supposed to be, but I do remember
the Jaguar.
I do, as I was saying, I do remember them being in an older Doctor Who episode because I have seen footage of them before.
No, there was a stinger in the opening with the Jaguar spaceship exploding, but we had no idea what this had to do with the rest of the plot until he took off his mask.
I could have sworn we've seen that particular alien before, though.
Not that I've seen.
Not that I've
seen black and white footage.
I haven't seen as much plastic.
So, but that could be wrong too, or it just could be obscure.
Or it was a reuse of a mask, possibly too.
So, as Randy mentioned, the Jaguar spaceship did explode, and what the Count reveals is that by being in an exploding ship millions of years before there was any life on the planet, he somehow shattered himself, and bits of his own consciousness and body went forth into the time stream to become essentially replicas of himself that can communicate through time, essentially creating a permanent meanwhile in the future type of deal where their own personal timelines continue and they can communicate along their own personal timeline while still being the two that we see are hundreds of years apart, but I imagine, considering how far in the past this event happened, that the other splinters are considerably farther apart.
Quite possibly.
Would have been a good opportunity to show some dinosaurs, but they didn't.
They seem to quite quietly keep away from dinosaurs whenever possible.
They've never really looked right in Doctor Who.
Probably because the last time they used dinosaurs, they had to go to the local toy store and do some kids' toys, or at least I'm pretty sure that's what they used. I mean, I didn't read any behind-the-scenes stories, but it's pretty clear that's what they used.
They're Doctor monsters.
So, in revealing this, it's pretty much we pretty much discovered that the entire scheme behind this whole time device and everything else is to go back to the explosion and prevent it from happening.
I will also be bringing this up later.
Interestingly, the Doctor, who is generally at odds with the Time Lords, especially the Fourth Doctor, or at least the one time I've seen him interact with Time Lords, he was pretty much telling them to go fuck themselves.
His relationship's a little better off now.
Okay, the only fourth Doctor Time Lord episode that I've seen was Genesis. I'm not exactly sure how...
that's first season, Tom Baker.
Okay.
Genesis. And this is much later. This is...
like third or fourth at least?
Fifth
I'm a little
or
surprised
sixth
because
season.
First season Tom Baker would have been, 2 or so years after the whole, here you go, thank you, we gave you back your TARDIS, enjoy. So
but he's basically saying, and here you are meddling with my life again in Genesis.
Right.
But since then, he's been recalled home, framed for the killing of the President of the High Council, wound up winning the seat of the President of the High Council, running off, coming back to Gallifrey under the pretense of taking that seat in order to protect the Time Lords from the Sontaran invasion, and then working for the Guardian with a Time Lord assistant. So,
the Time Lord assistant, I'm assuming being the one who's traveling with the map.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I should mention at this point that far from being a Fourth Doctor expert, this is the second Fourth Doctor adventure I've seen that actually features more of him than deleted scenes or a speech in the beginning. So, anything I say about the Fourth Doctor, take with a grain of salt unless Randy or Matt verifies it.
Yes, if you do say something wrong, I will be correcting you.
Yes, I have also seen quite a bit of Fourth Doctor myself.
Where were we? So, as I was saying, the Fourth Doctor, despite not necessarily agreeing with everything the Time Lords stand for, and despite the fact he doesn't actually bring up the laws of time, is pretty much coming down on the side of you're not breaking the first law of time, which, as the three Doctors explained to us, is not to cross your own timeline.
Yeah, that was actually what I was going to bring up, but I'll bring that up later. The more important thing that they bring up is the fact that the explosion of the Jaggeroth ship is what caused the creation of life on Earth.
True, although the justification the Doctor uses is more along the lines of, you're not interfering with your own timeline. But then again, he could just be explaining that because he wants to protect what actually did happen and not mess all that up. But yes, the presence of the Jaggeroth does introduce life to Earth, which starts everything on its course. So.
And he still gets flung back into present day because the Doctor and the others managed to stop him from crossing his own time stream. I believe it was the cop that helped again with that in particular problem.
I'm kind of curious as to what, if any, public opinion was of this episode. I mean, I know Doctor Who wasn't as huge in America back then as it is now, but I could just imagine the Bible Belt seeing this episode and parts of, certain individuals exploding in rage at it.
Yeah, except for the fact that the Bible Belt was fairly not aware of the existence of Doctor Who at the time.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's about what I thought. Or I thought that at least it was a lot less well known. I mean, I know this is Fourth Doctor, and Fourth Doctor is pretty much a worldwide figure, but I don't know what it was like at that time.
Let's see. He had a 64% audience appreciation score for this episode, and was getting between 14.5 and 16.1 million people watching this in England.
So quite a few people were watching.
Although it should be noted that Industrial Action at the time had blacked out the BBC's rival ITV. So there was literally nothing else on.
And at least based on, as far as you can trust Wikipedia figures, worldwide, the Fourth Doctor era, the Fourth and early Fifth Doctor eras were the highest viewership points of any era to this day as far as Doctor Who. It's getting there, and it's still not. There's a lot more competition now than there was 40 years ago.
This
30 years
episode
ago.
is considered to be one of the top 10 episodes of Doctor Who ever.
Ooh.
Viewership or like opinion?
Opinion polls.
Opinion.
Really?
1998 Doctor Who magazine placed it 7th place.
Ooh.
2008
it was named one of the 10 greatest episodes.
This is interesting because I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think it was anything. Then again, I mean, I'm not as big a Fourth Doctor fan as a lot of people are, but still, I didn't think it was anything spectacular.
I wouldn't say it wasn't spectacular, but I would say that it's good for Fourth Doctor, and Fourth Doctor is usually pretty dang good.
Well, you guys do know who wrote this episode, don't you?
I believe Flynn brought it up. I can't remember that.
Is this considering we were discussing this earlier? Is this an Adams episode?
This was written by Douglas Adams.
Ah, yes.
It was a.
I remember that did play a role in our deciding of what to watch. So.
Yes, I did actually want to bring this one up because it is the month of Douglas Adams' birthday.
Yeah, they did have.
It is one of Douglas Adams' 3 great contributions to Doctor Who. The other one being Pirate Planet and the lost episode Shada.
Both of which were good episodes. If you find a version of Shada somewhere out there.
And it's also another kind of epic, and I believe this is the first time that Doctor Who was filmed on location in another country.
Yes, as far as I'm aware.
Was it filmed in the actual museum or just in?
It was filmed in Paris. I'm not sure if the in-museum stuff was actually filmed. I'm fairly certain it's not.
I mean,
I would assume a lot of the indoor stuff was sets.
I can't imagine they would allow a film crew that close to the Mona Lisa. But.
Well, that's something I wanted to bring up. And this is again something I call real versus Hollywood. And that is the fact that in real life, the Mona Lisa is not that big. It is not painting-sized.
Just in order to wrap up the summary, essentially the Count goes forward with his plan, pretty much gets there, the Doctor stops him, and if there is any other relevant wrap-up, I can't recall it.
The cop rendered the alien unconscious, the Count unconscious, to which his time limit, which was set by Romana, went up, and he was brought back into the present, just in time for his lackey, who never saw him in alien form before, went berserk and caused the entire building to go up in flames.
That's right. So let me bring up those 2 points. Essentially was that Romana had messed with the guy's device so that it could only give him 2 minutes to go back there. The Doctor's like, well, he could cause the problem. He could cause enough of a problem in 1 minute. So let me go back and deal with it. And there was also for a little bit of it. Once the Doctor got back to the present, he did spend some time speaking with the Count's wife, I guess Countess, and it was pretty much like, you don't know a thing about your husband, do you? And then there's a bit of a montage where you see her like looking up information and finding ancient Egyptian pictures of his alien face and such. But that's pretty much it for the summary.
Yeah, and also all except for one of the paintings burned, and it was a painting that the Doctor wrote fake on.
Yes.
That's right. He wrote. He wrote fake on the canvases for 6 of them, I believe.
Yeah, for the 6 canvases, not the actual original. So apparently, the Mona Lisa that should be hanging is actually got fake written on it if you hit it with an X-ray. I dare you to look.
Yeah, that would be good to try. But anyway, so now that we're through the summary, Randy was talking about the Mona Lisa, unless you said everything you wanted to.
No. It's not painted on... The Mona Lisa is not actually painted on canvas, as, most of the paintings that are currently hanging, they're done. It's painted on poplar panel. And because of this, they've had a lot of issues with conserving the integrity of the Mona Lisa. Apparently, at one point during its history, it was removed from its frame. And the Mona Lisa actually has a crack in it, right along the hairline of the figure. Well, gee, that really would have helped determining which one was the real one, wouldn't it?
Think it might have.
And mind you, this crack occurred like in the 17th century.
Speaking of which, I know it's fairly modern to the point there's guns and everything, but I don't remember if the exact year of this story is stated. I don't think it was set in the year it aired, but I might be wrong.
Usually when they don't say the year it's set, I would almost assume it's at least present, if not near future.
Actually, I'm pretty sure he does establish that it. I think actually, now that I think about it, I think he does establish that it's close enough to either 70s or 80s. So it might actually be the year.
It's actually set in 1979.
So it was.
That's the year it was aired?
Yeah, it was the year. It was the year it was both filmed and aired. It was set in 1979 Paris. Now, I mentioned before this was written by Douglas Adams. It was actually originally written by somebody else, but that person had an even more intensive storyline that involved the 20s Paris, 79 Paris, and early 17th century, or early 16th, was it 16th or 17th, whichever, the Da Vinci era. But because of budget concerns, they had to cut the 20s Paris. And basically, they sat down Douglas Adams in the producer's back room with a pot of black coffee, and apparently he banged this out over the course of a weekend.
What I am seeing is that the pseudonym that was used for the writer of this episode was a pseudonym that was used for conglomerations of Douglas Adams, Graham Williams, and David Fisher.
Yeah, it's a pseudonym that production team used for writing staff et al., essentially. It's basically it's a in-thing name for collaborative.
Oh, I see. It's listed elsewhere in the article as being pseudonyms for different people. So I would take it that means in this specific case, it's Douglas Adams, Graham Williams, and David Fisher.
Yeah, in the previous one they mentioned Invasion of Time, Adams wasn't in there. So
right, it says Graham Williams and Anthony Reed.
Yep. So it basically just means collaborative effort. But I would say that Adams probably did 80 to 90% of the work on this. The original episode was a bit of a parody on a style of novel called Bulldog Drummond, which is a kind of the British version of film noir.
I have to wonder if the pseudonym David Agnew has anything to do with the politician Spiro Agnew.
I doubt it, but I don't know. I don't know what they're making.
Judging by the time frame, I don't know. It could potentially be some sort of parody or something, but if so, I don't know the details.
I don't know. I think that's looking for a connection where none exists.
True. I saw a familiar name and Googled it and realized that it was within 10 years of it. That's why I'm wondering.
I bet it was just picked at random. Or they were just taking letters of their own names and,
True.
Fooling around with them.
Yeah, most likely.
But, yeah, so it was a Bulldog Drummond spoof, which, like I said, was kind of the British equivalent of film noir style. Mike Hammer, Philip Marlowe, that kind of, hard-boiled detective style. So it was the whole character of Duggan was supposed to be a whole parody of that.
Oh, that's right, Dugan.
Yeah.
Dugan.
Also, this had our first celebrity cameo, I think, in a Doctor Who episode.
I think there's a few other celebrities, but he's definitely one of the more popular ones.
We had John Cleese in this for a few seconds, and Eleanor Braun, both of Monty Python's Flying Circus, doing a pair of art critics.
I know I saw a picture of him. Dang it.
But he was basically in the BBC at the time, and he's friends with Douglas Adams, who basically ran down and said, hey, can you do a quick film for like 5 minutes of Doctor Who?
And the fact that it is here explains why it shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they walk in and it disappears. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Exquisite. It was one of those two. Yeah, Cleese wanted them to be credited as Helen Swanetsky and Kim Bread. But the BBC failed to see the joke and told them no.
Okay.
I should point out that the continuity of this episode is it's the season after the whole Key to Time 6 parts, 6 serial season, which resulted in the Doctor royally pissing off the Black Guardian. So in order to escape retaliation by essentially an omnipotent being, the Doctor has programmed a device into the TARDIS called the Randomizer.
So naturally it takes them to modern-day Earth.
What's that?
So naturally it takes them to modern-day Earth, a place you would never expect to find the Doctor.
Well, the first place it took them was Skaro.
True.
In the far future. Then it takes them here, and then it takes them a few other places. The whole randomizer shtick only lasts a season. And if you take a close look at this episode, you can see why.
Yeah, I think he technically unplugs it for a short while, doesn't he?
He must have had to wind up going back and forth between that time and Da Vinci's time, and then back to the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if he just stepped into it with the randomizer, he would have just left the guy to change time all he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
This is also noted that I believe this is the second serial featuring this incarnation of Romana.
Yes.
Who apparently has a magic hat. I don't know if we can get a photo of the way her hat manages to stay that way without moving no matter what she does.
Well, okay, you've just hit the topic of Romana's costume. First of all, you look at the first part of this before they actually get involved in the plot, you almost get the feeling that the Doctor is taking the Romana on an extended date of Paris. He mentions they're on vacation, he's showing her the sights, taking her to see art, and Romana is dressed up like a schoolgirl.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, it actually threw me off at first because I didn't know when I started watching this. I didn't know, the timeline of the Fourth Doctor's companions and everything. So I'm like, he's going out with a, looks to be a blonde schoolgirl. I don't remember that in any of my Fourth Doctor companion lists. So I'm sitting there. I spent about a good 10-15 minutes trying to figure out who this companion was before I finally realize that that's what the second Romana looks like, because she does not appear to be a Time Lord if you just look at her.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular outfit,
neither does the Doctor, really.
Yes, but
were you expecting her to go around with the whole high collars and robes?
I expected her to have the demeanor of the high collars and robes without actually the dress.
Romana 1 kind of had that going on.
Romana 1 had that going, but Romana 2 just kind of went, whee!
There's also the fact that Romana 2 is, or should I say, Romana in this episode, she gives more of an experienced traveler, Time Lord vibe later on, but in the first few scenes, she just seems to be, a young girl traveling with the Doctor getting a tour of Paris.
Well, okay. So, you know how it's kind of mentioned in the 2005 to 2006 when the 8th Doctor, or the 9th Doctor regenerates into the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. And it's kind of been mentioned that the 10th Doctor personality was kind of tweaked to match Rose. Whereas before he was speaking with an accent from the north, he suddenly comes out speaking estuary to match Rose's own estuary accent, for instance. One might argue that Romana did much the same thing. When she regenerated, for actually no apparent reason, following the end of the Key to Time, she seemed to, kind of tweak her new persona to match the Fourth Doctor.
I remember seeing something about essentially she had to regenerate in order to prevent something that was happening, or...
No, and it's obvious you've never seen Destiny of the Daleks.
I haven't, but I was reading on the TARDIS data core. It was something.
The Doctor's in the console room fooling around with K9, and Romana comes out and basically goes, "What are you doing?" "I'm regenerating." And that's really all the explanation we get. But the fact is that the actress that's playing Romana 2 was on the previous serial as Princess Astra. Was a whole purpose of this, of the Doctor going off on how you can't go around wearing someone else's body. But she manages to fool the Doctor into approving of it anyway.
Because she wore essentially a female version of his current outfit.
Yeah.
And he just went, "Yes, that's it, fantastic!" And then she reveals the face, and she's like, "Oh, blast."
Outsmarted. But, yeah, so here, it really does kind of look like the Doctor's taking Romana on a big date of Paris. And here's Romana dressed up as a schoolgirl. "Can you say, hi, I'm wearing fetish?"
Awkward.
Yeah. And, the thing is, Lala Ward had no idea. She came up with the idea of the schoolgirl costume herself. She didn't actually think about the fact that after this serial aired, she got loads of letters from kids' fathers saying, "Nice uniform."
Yeah, a lot of the women in the Tom Baker era kind of just took a few steps back every time after their first episodes or two, and went, "Oh, right, older people watch this too, don't they?"
I'm not actually seeing the.
Lilo,
I'm not actually seeing the line that I referred to about there being a reason for her reincarnating, because when I try to find it again, I find other lines about how she regenerated seemingly on a whim.
Yeah, she did seem to regenerate on a whim.
Yeah, we're not entirely sure why.
I've watched the episode. I've seen it recently. She seems to regenerate on a whim. It was also the fact that they didn't really know that replacement was going on until about, I would say, like a couple of days before that episode was to be recorded. So again, Douglas Adams sat down with a pot of black coffee and banged that opening out.
Yeah, and Douglas probably didn't quite know what to do about regeneration at that point.
Oh, he knew. He is just like, remember, this is Douglas, so he does everything with a kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of method. So
True.
The entire regeneration scene was very tongue-in-cheek.
I do remember seeing accounts that essentially the actress had complained that she was written to be too similar to the previous Romana, and that her then costume and writing was changed after that.
It's possible. I don't know. I haven't really looked up that.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked up any actual details about the second Romana myself.
Oh, here we go. This was one of 3 different accounts explaining the regeneration, saying that when the Key to Time was assembled without the 6th piece, it left Princess Astra and was absorbed by Romana. The strain forced the regeneration.
That's complete and total...
out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's complete and total fan wank. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the actual excuse. There is no actual excuse.
It was... Okay, here... Each of these accounts are from different, either 2 of them are from audio stories and 1 is from a prose story, but that's the most believable one just looking at it. The others don't even seem to make sense.
Yeah, it's, I just think that she just basically decided, okay, I'm tired of this body.
So basically those were attempts to retcon into making it make more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things that we just gradually just nod our head and go, yeah, it's unexplained, quote unquote. We'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. My explanation is she just basically went, I'm tired of this body.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that last one I saw.
Hmm?
It's like, my official explanation is Romana went, I'm tired of this body. I quite liked hers.
And she's dead, so it's not like it's going to affect her.
No, she was not dead.
I thought that character died.
Nope. They bring it up also in that same regeneration scene of what would happen if you both showed up at the same party at a party wearing the same body. Again, Douglas Adams wrote this.
It works, but a lot of the way you're describing it sounds, I don't know if it's just your tone of voice or what, but I'm hearing a lot of Troutman in this. I don't know why.
Well, you can eventually, when we're done recording here, decide for yourself, Bill. There, that's a link to the regeneration scene for Romana off of YouTube. Now...
Meningitis!
As you're saying.
I went into this episode, I was quite fond of this episode. You know, it's written by Douglas Adams, who is one of my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
Really, his writing style greatly influenced my own in my middle school and high school years. I have almost all of his books.
I have his entire Hitchhiker's Guide in one big book.
I don't have the last book. I checked that one out from a library, read it.
That's the one that was recently written, right? Or is that one still being?
No, that one was written by a ghostwriter. This one was mostly harmless. It was the 5th book in the Hitchhiker series.
Okay, that's why I wasn't sure if you meant the one that was recently done after he died, or...
No, that one was done by somebody else. That's not his book.
So you're only talking about
his universe.
Okay, so you're saying the last one that he wrote.
Yeah, I don't have that because I'd gotten the collection before that, and I checked this book out from the library and read it, and it was kind of off kilter for his writing. You could kind of tell he was in a bad place when he wrote it. Anyway, but his writing influenced my own, so I've always loved this episode. So I went in here thinking I'd be thrilled with this episode again. And you know what I found?
It's okay.
Continuity error, continuity error, continuity error. I'm like, wow. First, of course, I'm bringing up the randomizer like I did before.
Right. Yeah, the fact that we suddenly ignored the randomizer in this particular episode.
Yeah, was kind of a whoopsie. Then, yes, the whole laws of time thing. Basically, what Scarloni would have done was create a grandfather paradox. Because Scarloni split into 7 pieces, advanced human technology up to the point that by his last one, he could create a device to go back in time using human technology and stop himself from creating the human race. Does anybody else see grandfather paradox in here? Anybody? Anybody?
Not as familiar with the term.
I'm not sure what you mean by the term, yeah.
Okay, grandfather paradox is a simple one.
I can kind of get the idea.
Let's say I had a time machine, and I went back in time to meet my grandfather before he met my grandmother.
Oh, right, okay.
And we get in a fight, and I kill him. Well, if that never happened, or if he's dead, he couldn't meet my grandmother. If he couldn't have met my grandmother, then I would never be born, because my father wouldn't have either. But if I wasn't born, how could I go back in time and meet my own grandfather? And if I couldn't do that, how could I kill him?
Except on
repeat ad nauseum.
Except on a much larger scale, because certain theories of time would just say that, time would converge around, basically state that your grandfather was killed in a different way and smooth itself out, versus it's hard to do that with creating life on a planet and advancing its technology, before going back and, in order to go back and prevent that. That would be split universe kind of shit on pretty much any version, any theory of time. No, most of them anyway.
Just about, yeah.
It's just basically a universe-shattering paradox. And yet, Scarloni seems to be completely unaware of the possibility of this.
It also only further proves that he's not actually a regular time traveler, and ergo is kind of a loony.
Yes. But
well, I do remember when he found out the Doctor was a Time Lord. He wasn't aware exactly what a Time Lord was. He's like, oh, you're a Lord of Time? Excellent. I need someone who knows about that shit.
Yeah, but, the fact is, though, that the Doctor never brought it up either.
I think Romana did.
No, it wasn't brought up. I was watching for it, and it never showed up.
I could have sworn Romana used the word Time Lord at some point or something.
Oh, no, Time Lord was brought up. No, I meant the whole grandfather paradox thingy.
Oh, okay. I've got you. No, I don't think that was, no.
Or the fact that, doing that would, the Doctor Who equivalent thereof of mentioning paradox of unraveling the web of time.
Yeah, he pretty much was like, oh, that would undo human creation, and then he went to him and was basically, a Time Lord preventing breaking the first law of time, but at no point was it mentioning, any more complicated matters.
Yeah, it never really got into that.
I mean, and this is from someone whose only experience with Douglas Adams is I think, which version of Hitchhiker's Guide was a TV miniseries? Was that the 80s?
Yeah, that was the
that's early 80s, late 70s. Yeah.
That's pretty much my experience with Douglas Adams, to the point, and just watching that, it would get to the point where he doesn't care about all that because it's not entertaining enough, and I might be completely off the mark, but that's just the impression I got from only having seen that.
It's possible. It's also possible it simply didn't occur to him. There's another point I was going to bring up, and I've lost it. Something I mentioned in the opening. Oh, yes. And this really wasn't a continuity fault. It was more of I think they could have done this better. And that is, episode 1 didn't really need the opening tag with the Jaggeroth ship blowing up. It would have actually been better as a flashback later in the episode.
I think the whole point of that was as a hook to, to draw you in, like, there's an alien here. Oh, wait, we're in Paris.
And especially the first episode reveal where he pulls his mask off and reveals he's a Jaggeroth for no reason. Other than, hey, look, I'm the alien. Cut to credits.
That's a trope.
Yeah, but
that's, I don't know that's a typical trope for a multi-part episode.
Would have been better if you didn't know he was an alien.
Right.
Until the reveal later on.
The whole point was come back next week because he's an alien.
Yeah, and I really think they could have found a better hook for that, really. Because there's really no point to him doing that. And
now that you say that, I think the cliffhanger of the following episode was him meeting the second version of the Count in the past.
Right. Which that would have been better.
Which would have, that would have been
known if he was an alien at the end of the.
If we had no idea he was an alien, that would have been really.
That would have been what the fuck. Instead, it's like, oh, okay, alien.
Like, what are you doing here? I might ask you the same thing, Doctor. And it's like, and he actually, at least to me, he looked older than the one in the present. I don't know if it was actually that way or if that was just my perception. I think it might have been
because he was wearing a era-specific wig.
Right. Okay, if he was wearing a wig, that would have been it, yeah. So it's like, I kind of had thought that he had, later on in time gone back and traveled back. But I was like, I don't know, but it's definitely a good hook to keep watching.
I think that hook would have worked better, though, had we not known he was an alien.
True.
So I think that epic reveal in the front didn't need to be there. I think it would have been better if they had buffered the Romana and Doctor going out a bit, and they would have kept the hook with them pointing the guns on the doctor, which was like a scene before.
Yeah.
I think that would have been. I think that would have worked as a better hook, and it would have made for a better, more interesting episode. So this episode is by far not perfect. But again, Douglas Adams had about 3 days to write the script with no chance to do a rewrite.
Yeah, so it kind of needed to get pegged down quickly, and for what it is, it's definitely a good script. For the amount of time that was actually devoted to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But another reason I like this one is it really shows the beginning of the Doctor-Romana relationship.
An awkward one, but yes.
Well, no, you have to remember that at the time, Tom Baker and Lalla Ward were dating. They weren't married yet, they were dating. And you can just see that they're probably at the beginning of dating here. And then as it progressed, it got to the point that they got married shortly after Romana left the show. And they had their on-off moments, but when they were on, you could really tell it, and it really bled through into the Doctor and Romana.
Oh, I thought Tom got married to the first Romana.
Nope, he got married to Lalla Ward.
Oh.
And they got divorced, I think, like 18 months later.
Yeah, I'm not sure what quite went wrong there, but yeah.
They both decided that it was best to put their careers before any personal lives.
Tom decided that he had to be the only person in the relationship, and there wasn't room for a second person.
That's possible.
Now, of course, I'm. Please, nobody take that as being entirely serious. I'm joking, but
well, it's
it's
also a documented fact that Tom Baker was very full of himself in those days.
That's my
also
point.
Very
but
true.
obviously,
He admits that he did some
nobody
things that he
would
shouldn't have done
nobody
back
would
then.
divorce for the sake of being a stage hog. But it's entirely possible he was self-centered.
Yeah, he admits that he was somewhat self-centered and very heavily opinionated.
Yeah,
in a lot of interviews these days. So he's like, yeah, I was kind of a beast to work with. At
this point, this is also the last of what I refer to as the Tom Baker era of the show, where it's basically Tom, while you've got writers and other stuff, Tom is very much doing a producer's job as well as some of the directing and some minor rewrites on the set. During rehearsal, he'd look at it, wouldn't it be better if I did a line like this?
Yeah.
Which was everybody's cue of thinking, I'm doing the line like this. So he was very much a Shatner at the time.
But for all the good reasons, mostly to keep the show going, and the show was very strong at the time.
Yeah, the show was very well liked, but I'm noting the fact that one season later was when John Nathan Turner came in.
Yeah.
And everything changed.
Right, and that was also around the time when they started we're slowly writing the Tom Baker out of the show, so obviously he didn't get as much input once that decision was made.
No, that wasn't until the very last season.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is the fact that during that...
I had too many seasons to keep track of,
during the sixth season, which was the JT's first season, Tom got repeatedly more fed up with the way things were going, and he told them shortly into his final season that he wasn't going to be the Doctor after this season. Because I think it eventually came down to Tom Baker being in J&T's office going, look, it either goes the way I go or I go. And J&T said, fine, you go.
And was that before or after the red uniform?
The red uniform starts next season, the season after this.
Right.
So that was shortly after the red uniform started.
Which is the last season.
Yeah, the red uniform was part of the problem Tom Baker had. Tom Baker also knew that he was going to wind up with another companion plopped in his lap. And if Tom Baker had his way, he wouldn't have had any companions. Although I don't think he minded Lala Ward.
Right.
But he, that was the whole Deadly Assassin was Tom Baker going, I can hold this show without any companions.
Huzzah.
And he said, well, yeah, that was good, Tom, but we really don't, the writers would really like to have another protagonist to bounce scenes off against. So they wrote in Leela.
I'm just hoping that in whatever 50th anniversary things he appears in, that he's mellowed out a bit.
He has.
Because,
he has mellowed out a lot.
He's like Shatner is now, where he's actually prone to making fun of himself.
Okay, I'm like, because even looking at the 90s, I remember watching Dimensions in Time, and really my only thing that I actually had a complaint about was, why does Tom Baker need to have a separate thing by himself instead of being with all the other doctors?
Well, he probably didn't have the time for it, to be honest.
That I could understand if that's the case.
He still kept acting in a lot of different things.
And like,
not necessarily all on film either.
If it was the case of refusing to be mixed in with the other doctors, that I would have a problem with. But if it was the case of we only had him for for an hour, and that's what he did, then that makes sense.
It also might have been, we also have him from 5 to 8 on a Tuesday, and none of the other doctors can make it at that time.
Right.
So we're going to get what we can and go with it.
Especially since the show had been canceled several years earlier.
It had been actually 2 years previous, and the Dimensions in Time was made on a shoestring.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Because you can't tell.
Oh, I can tell. I can tell.
Does sarcasm come through on a podcast?
I'm sorry, it's made on a it's made on a shoestring that has the what are those things that they put around the laces missing?
I know what you mean, like the cap type of thing that people sometimes replace with tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tape.
I actually usually know what those are. If my housemate here,
I know them too, but I can't think of them at the moment.
But if it has another term, I don't know it.
It does, and it's going to bother me until I find out. I know this because actually there's I think a character in one of the comic books that mentions those things being part of some great conspiracy.
I think also it was mentioned in Animaniacs at one point.
What?
Aglet.
Aglet, thank you.
Thank you, Google.
Aglets will control time and space.
Yeah, it was also Matt and I used to play City of Heroes, and there was a piece of salvage you could get in that game that actually brought up that quote.
I still love the fact that you can collect an oxygen destroyer, but that's another story.
Anyway, that's a different podcast, Matt. But that was made on a real thin budget, and we're soul tangenting, except for the fact that we're talking about Tom Baker. At this point, Tom Baker had pretty much supreme control over the show. The show's humor was, very much to the style of Douglas Adams.
Which made him an excellent writer for the show.
That tongue-in-cheek, slightly had to think about it humor, offbeat.
Yeah. And Tom definitely works very perfectly with Douglas Adams' writing style. And
had John Nathan Turner not showed up, we would have probably seen more of that style with Adams writing several episodes,
Wouldn't that be glorious?
Instead, John Nathan Turner comes in the next season and basically goes, "You're fired." He pretty much Mr. Spacely's him, and that's why Douglas Adams was bitter about his time with Doctor Who for years after that. In fact, in some of his later writing, Ford Prefect, one of his main characters from Hitchhikers, kind of becomes the anti-Doctor.
I kind of see that because from what I'm seeing, as far as what I know of John Nathan Turner and his whole era, it really doesn't work well with Douglas Adams' style at all.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I think John Nathan Turner looked at the style of humor and didn't get it. That's the thing about Douglas Adams' humor, is you either find it funny as hell or you don't get it.
And I tend to alternate several times within a scene whether I find it funny as hell or I don't get it.
The bold tulips fell from the air as well and went, oh no, not again.
Not again. Yes. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has this to say about Daleks.
Just stay away. No, sleep, just stay away. They're horrible.
Yeah, it's it was for that style. I would almost have expected that kind of thing to come out of Destiny of the Daleks. I really wish he would have written that episode instead of.
God, Douglas Adams writing a Dalek episode
would have been great. All he got was that opening. If he'd written the entire episode, I think I would have been peeling over. But yeah, so this is really the last hurrah of the Baker era. And, you could almost start to see what it would have been like. I sometimes feel that if John Nathan Turner had not come in as a producer at the time, or as the show's, main runner, we might still be in the Tom Baker era of Doctor Who.
We might be. Is that why Shadow was canceled?
No, Shadow was canceled because there was a production strike. It was meant to be the finale for this season.
Right.
But there was not a writer's strike. The filmmakers union. It had already shut down ITV and spread to the BBC by the end of the series production time. So they just lopped that 4 weeks off the production block. There was basically somebody in the filmmakers union was, I don't know if it was the gaffers or the directors or who it was that went on strike, but somebody did.
Yeah, I remember it was important people that they need to have there, and because they were gone, pretty much everyone involved with that particular episode just went, what?
Yeah, BBC had a month of reruns.
And everyone who took part in that particular episode, what was filmed of it, kind of felt betrayed, if you will.
Yeah, they kind of felt it was let down because it was
because
good
it was
work.
Also a good episode from what I've seen.
Yeah, a lot of what Shadow would have been was recycled by Douglas Adams into Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Either of you have the novelization Douglas Adams wrote?
For what?
Of Shadow?
No.
I do not. I know the fact that he never did a novelization of City of Death, even though he was asked to on multiple occasions. Because the BBC wanted to pay him a pittance.
That's right, I remember hearing that. And you know what, another thing I'm wondering if, I'm trying to remember if the Shadow novelization was actually Adams or not. Because now that you say that, I'm thinking that might have actually been done by someone else after his death. Now that you say that,
yeah,
I remember hearing that or reading that.
Yeah, he wrote. They offered him a advance of £600.
Oh, there we go. It was written by Gareth Roberts in March 2012. Basically the deal was they wanted to pay him the same thing they paid all their other novelization writers.
And yeah, with the City of Death, he replied to them saying, "I don't want to be embarrassing, but I do have a tendency to be a best-selling author." And Target refused to change their offer on it. Several years later, Target editor Nigel Robinson offered an advance of £4,000, double what was the standard advance at the time.
And probably about a fourth of Adams' normal advance.
Probably.
Yeah, and Adams again said no. And Adams never allowed any other author to write a novelization. Because you can now imagine Terrence Dix in the background going, "Oh, me, choose me." Yeah. Or Malcolm Herc, or about anyone else that did like 150 billion Target novelizations for Doctor Who.
Right.
Me, I sell a lot of books. I sell a lot of books. No, me, I sell books too.
But yeah, there was more. I don't want to use the term plot holes as between airings. Flynn has sent us the definition of plot hole, and continuity gaps actually are not a plot hole. There's still continuity gaps and still should be avoided.
Considering what this is, when you say, I just want to be sure I'm hearing, because when you say continuity, there's two different types of continuity you could be referring to, and that's series continuity, or that's simply within episodes, such as, accidentally changing outfit between takes. And I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying properly.
Yeah, series continuity.
Okay,
stuff.
Doctor Who.
Like the fact that they did that, they were able to get to Da Vinci's studio, even though the TARDIS is supposed to have the randomizer.
Yeah.
Okay.
One just kind of scratches their head, although they can very easily assume some things.
That was kind of a continuity gap.
That's not even continuity, such as events changing between stories that can be written off as timey-wimey. That's facts of the season that are not being followed through.
Yes, they even mentioned the randomizer earlier in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's what while they're going through Paris, they're like, it's a beautiful city and it has a great bouquet. What bouquet is this? 1979, not the best. But
that's right, because they were talking about they were like, the way they were talking about it was as though it were wine, even though it's clear that that's not the
yes,
that type of analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it's like, the randomizer, it's great for hiding where you're going, but not the best for choosing the destination. Or something along that line.
Yeah, something along those lines.
So the randomizer's mentioned, but then not followed in the episode.
In the preceding episodes, yeah. Because they get to pick exactly where they're going and land perfectly where they wanted to go 3 times after that.
Mm-hmm. Which I believe is an earlier conversation we had, Bill. What episodes were crucial to the plot where the Doctor had to control the TARDIS with absolute accuracy?
This story.
Yes, what? This one.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Now, I should point out that the randomizer was a gimmick developed by the producers specifically to avoid having the Doctor be able to do that. They were feeling that the Doctor was getting too good at steering to places he wanted to go.
So they wanted to show a loophole so you could just randomly go somewhere without really knowing where you're going.
Mm-hmm. And again, JNT immediately out the randomizer.
Which is really something throughout the history of the show. They've always fluctuated on that. We want the Doctor to go where he wants to go until we want it to be a surprise.
Mm-hmm. Which, kind of boils down to the Doctor generally can get to where he's going, just not all the time.
Right. And it's like pretty much with every Doctor, that's the thing. Although, I think in more modern years, it's kind of gotten to the point where the Doctor can get where he wants to go unless the TARDIS feels that there's an emergency going on elsewhere.
Or just feels like saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, generally, if he wants to go somewhere peaceful, but somewhere in time or space there's an emergency, he'll end up at that emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Or also to phrase it as TARDIS once put it herself, she takes him where he needs to go, not exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah, I like that term better, because you're saying, Bill, there's an emergency in time and space. Yet for the TARDIS, all of time and space exists simultaneously. Right. Therefore, there's always an emergency going on.
True. But I'm trying to figure out a better way to describe it. But
TARDIS kind of nailed it on the head, didn't she?
if the Doctor doesn't have a good enough reason to go where he's going, it's up to the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be persuasive when you're...
And I'm thinking, by and large, most of the time, the Doctor really doesn't care.
True. Well, there was a time he was trying to impress his new girlfriend by going to see Elvis, and they ended up seeing the coronation instead.
Mm-hmm. Which was also good. But, yeah.
That was awesome, though.
Well, that was also... RTD was definitely into bringing that, because also remember the Ninth Doctor tried to take Rose to Italy in 1870, I think. or like 1875, and wound up in Cardiff in 1860 whatever.
Right.
Was off by several years and half a continent.
Or off by 6 months or 12 months instead of 12 hours.
Yeah, RTD was big on that. And that's really where it boils down to, is what does the producer want to do? Apparently, with Moffat and the 11th Doctor, the Doctor generally goes where he wants to.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because even with Tennant and RTD, like, there are times where the Doctor, like, to show off, could bring the TARDIS to the exact spot he wanted, to the exact second he wanted, to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
So it really fluctuates, episode by episode, hour by hour. And even, like, I can't think of I'd have to look to think of a specific examples, but I think even with the first Doctor, there were times where he could bring it about exactly where he wanted to go, and times where he had no control.
Actually, with the first Doctor, he basically had no control. That was kind of the plot of the original first season.
Yeah, the first season or so.
He has to take exact...
Yeah, the first season he had absolutely no control.
It drove him kind of crazy, and it drove his companions even more crazy.
Yeah, because they were trying... He was, ostensibly trying to take Ian and Barbara back to 1963, and never really could. Eventually they wound up taking a Dalek ship, I think.
Yeah, a Dalek time machine, which they abandoned quickly as
it was
exploded.
a TARDIS. You can't even call it a time machine. It was a TARDIS. It was bigger on the inside.
Time machines are time machines. It doesn't matter how they work, as long as they actually do what they're supposed to do, which is take you through time and space.
Yeah, the question on how the Daleks got a TARDIS is really...
Yeah, TARDISes don't necessarily bring you through time and space. They bring you somewhere in time and space. They don't let you always pick the location. They're not the Moffat Deus Ex time machine. The River Song Deus Ex. Well, no, actually, I can't even say that because RTD and Jack introduced it first, didn't they? Or was it Moffat and Jack?
Who?
The vortex manipulator.
It was during the RTD era. I don't think Moffat had anything to do with those episodes.
Well, he wrote the episode that introduced Jack, but I don't know if he had the vortex manipulator in that episode.
Not that I'm aware of.
I know he was a former time agent, but I don't know if they mentioned the details.
No, he didn't use the vortex manipulator at that point because he had his own ship.
Yeah.
So he was a former time agent, but the method of time agent saying wasn't really described.
He had a time ship at that point, yes.
Oh, it was a time ship, okay.
Yeah. Remember, he ordered a martini off of it at the end of the episode?
I knew he had a ship. I didn't realize the ship itself was a time ship.
It had to be. Because he followed that Jula warship through time, therefore it had to go through time, therefore it's a time ship. Okay. QED.
More Douglas Adams.
It looks like a duck, and it sounds like a duck, and it walks like a duck. It's a duck.
I declare it a penguin. Because it's too cold yet.
See, I'm looking...
passes the duck test for time ship, therefore it is.
It looks like a duck, it sounds like a duck, and it walks like a duck. It might actually be a nearsighted guy with a lot of weapons.
I'll give you that.
and that's how I look at things in a sci-fi franchise. It could really be something completely different.
Using one of my own other fandoms against me. Well played, Clerk. Well played.
Oh, way off the topic.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's,
we don't have Flynn to argue against right now, so yeah. What was this to talk about this episode?
I'm a little curious as to how he was split into separate times, yet each version of himself, unless they unless there's, as far as I can tell, each version of himself has the exact same mass and volume as the original version. The only thing that's actually split is the mind.
Well, unless of course he was actually existing at multiple time points in the universe simultaneously.
True, it would be kind of like that that kind of unexplained guy in Torchwood. The old man.
That's kind of the way I took it, is he was actually existing.
That I could see that. That's not the way he described it, but I could see that as working.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense than a telepathic telepathic link between multiple versions of yourself in multiple time streams.
Yeah, it's that his consciousness was fractured between all those points.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of had to concentrate to actually communicate with himself.
Shoot.
Also, alien physiology, we don't know how it works.
Yeah. I'm like, if they had shown him being like, a smaller version of himself appearing and then growing, or him having an offhand remark about the fact that he had to grow back to his normal size, then I wouldn't have even made that comment.
Yeah. But they don't always go through that, I guess.
Again,
and to be honest, he doesn't even officially know, I would think, how things actually worked either. He just knows that there's multiple versions of himself, and he has to communicate with them, and he's trying to get his way home.
Me being someone who likes to retcon things when they fit together, I'm kind of now seeing as his ship exploded on the Cardiff time rift.
Kind of thing.
And that's how it happened.
Although it was somewhere over the sea, just another time rift. Yeah. So that's all over the place.
I'm like, Cardiff wasn't where it, didn't exist, or if it did, it wasn't in the same place millions upon millions of years ago, so.
Mm-hmm. But, another thing that bothered me was the character of the Countess Scarleone.
Yeah, she kind of seemed flat in one note.
Well, also the fact
she's
apparently married to this guy.
Oh, yeah.
And has been for a few years.
And she knows, like, he's capable of, impossible technology. He knows about these, paintings that couldn't possibly exist, yet he knows about them. But
she doesn't know he's an alien.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have thought she would have figured it out the first time she went to bed.
Honestly, when the doctor started talking to her about it, I was kind of expecting, like, in, which one was it? Sound of Drums, when she was like, your husband doesn't act, couldn't possibly exist. He's not who he claims he is. It's like, oh, you mean the master, the guy who's standing behind you? Yeah, I know.
Oh, you mean he's an alien? Yeah, that would have been perfect. Yeah, I know, but he's keeping me rich,
Right.
It would have been, and it would have actually made sense with, Adam's writing style.
Right.
Maybe it was something that they changed at the last minute, too.
It's possible. It's also possible that was something that didn't get altered from the original draft, which was not written by Adams.
Also possible, yes.
But you would think, the first time they went to bed, and it was, excuse me, dear, let me take my mask off.
So, where does this thing go again? Oh, right, yes. How do you humans do that? Oh.
I wasn't even thinking of that, Matt. You dirty mind.
Hey, I'm just saying. Not every species has it in the same spot.
Not everyone keeps their genitals in the same place, Captain. Yes.
Well, although depending on how many, depending on how old, how long he was on Earth, he could have. That would be an interesting flashback type of thing.
Well,
it'd be like hundreds of years ago, the first time that I met a human woman. Things were awkward.
Awkward.
They were more awkward when I realized it wasn't a woman, but it was actually a time agent.
Well, I was just thinking of more, you may now kiss the bride. Excuse me, dear, but your nose is now on the right side of your face. Oops. There's several cracks you could make about the Jaggeroth and the mask, yes.
True.
What is this thing?
I was thrown off watching it by how the name was so close to Jaggerfest. But since Matt brought up that image on the stream, in the very beginning of the episode when we first saw the ship, I thought it had something to do with War of the Worlds.
I saw pretty much almost stock alien ship.
Yeah.
Like I saw the thing with legs and whatever. I'm like, are these Martians invading?
Well, they are green, but I don't think they're the Ice Warriors. No. Ice Warriors coming back.
When I rewatched Runaway Bride and she kept calling him a Martian, I was waiting to see if he would have any reference to that or not, but...
No, yeah.
He just kept saying, I'm not a Martian. I'm not a Martian. I'm not a Martian.
Believe me, if I was a Martian, you would know it. Just looking at it.
Other than the points I've brought up, I do find the dialogue to be very witty and snappy.
Mm-hmm. The characters, for what they are actually pretty good too.
I found the detective guy to be a little more one-dimensional than I expected him to be.
He was supposed to be. He was a blunt rock, and that's all. And he realized
was a parody of.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned he was a parody. Okay.
Yeah, he was a parody of the old hard-boiled detective style of the British version, which is even more blunt and thuggish than
he came almost off as if he made Jim Kirk into a detective, but didn't give him anyone to bounce ideas off of, I guess.
Well, he didn't have ideas. He just had his elbow.
True.
Or his fist.
His idea, yeah.
Yeah, that was deliberately written, and that was not written by Adams. That was written by the predecessor as the parody, and Adams just worked with it.
Well, I'm kind of like I do like the fact that when he picked up the chair and was just about to start beating people with it, no one was like, "That's a dumb way to escape." They were just like, "Why would we try to escape now?"
I just like it. It's no. That's a Louis Vuitton.
I remember that, but not the context.
Yeah, it was the chair was a Louis Vuitton.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's a very expensive antique chair.
That's right. Okay.
Very expensive chair. Put that back down. You don't use that for clubbing people.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking, man?
Which is ironic because the detective is the one from Paris and the doctor isn't. I think the Parisian would know that.
No, actually, I
don't think they really.
Oh no! Wait, was it?
No, the detective was from England.
He was from England. Yeah, that's right. As soon as I said it, I knew something was off. I'm like, wait, no. Didn't he say he came from England?
Yeah, I think he did mention he was from somewhere not in Paris. But no, he also had his uses though too. He smashed windows, he smashed walls, he smashed outdoors.
Yep, Louis Vuitton, by the way, is a company founded in 1854 for making luxury products.
Hmm.
And they still exist today.
So yeah, that was apparently meant to be a very fancy chair.
You can't turn on the radio without being reminded of that.
Me?
I thought it was like a fashion design or something.
That's true. I get plenty of spam mail by people selling Louis Vuitton handbags.
Well, I mean, you can't like turn on a random song on the radio without, having a 50-50 shot of someone mentioning Gucci or Louis Vuitton.
Really? You must not listen to classic rock stations then.
Oh, not even a little bit.
I must say that I detest most versions of modern music right now. I'm waiting for them to get over it and go on to the next stage of better music. Please.
Keep hoping.
Please. with sugar on top, please.
Okay, so anything else we have to say about this episode?
Other than the stuff that you did mention, it's a nice self-contained little episode, and it works fairly fine on its own, for the most part. Oh, also, I've seen the blooper between Tom and, gosh, I can't think of his name now. Him. This blooper right here. If you're watching the stream.
John Cleese.
John Cleese, yeah. It's like, I know the name. Why isn't it coming to me? Tom and John Cleese, apparently for just a random little blooper while film was still being reeled, they went, oh, by the way, can I get your autograph? Tom to Cleese, and he's like, you got a pen? Tom checks his pockets. No. Anyone got a pen? No? No? Oh, the heck with it. And they both walk away.
Actually, I think that was deliberately made for the blooper reel for that season.
Possibly.
Did they air blooper reels?
They had them occasionally. I don't know. I think it was they had a Christmas special that had their outtakes. I don't know if they were aired or if they were just for the cast.
I'll say that. Then again, I imagine that at this point in time, with Doctor Who being big hit and it being late 70s, going on 80s, I could imagine they would, be planning a VHS release. And although VHS
just a little like extra on the end of the tape or something, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, VHS never really did have special.
Yeah, Doctor Who on VHS didn't actually start coming out until the late 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this episode never actually hit until 91.
Though I would also mind you that from what I've heard with the Thundercats bloopers was that they were originally recorded from the original audio, and then the audio guys just happened to make mixed tapes of bloopers that amused them, and what we get online is pretty much what those audio editors kept and then happened to share, and people then just went crazy over it. So it could be just as well that the filmers kind of did their own little blooper things and even let the actors get on it a little bit and saved it.
Yes, I looked it up. That's actually for what they call a Christmas tape. And what those are their videotapes compiled by the technical staff. Yeah. They're unendorsed by the actual company, but they're just made for their personal amusement and their friends' enjoyment. They probably show them at like the Christmas parties.
Yeah, and then maybe make a couple copies for any of the guys that worked with them and so forth, and then one day one of them decided to share it on the web.
Like, I think one was Tom Baker during the Invasion of Time. He asked the K9 a question, and K9 says, data unavailable or something like that, and Tom Baker just snaps at him, yeah, you never fucking know the answer when it's important.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah, that was from the Christmas tape, I think 2 seasons prior to this. And then there was the one with Tom and the first Romana drinking in the TARDIS with K9.
And K9's acting drunk.
Yeah, and that was for the Christmas tape the following season.
It's not hard to make K9 look like he's drunk either. That poor thing had so many problems.
Oh god, that dog was a pain to work with. Yeah, you notice K9 was not in this episode.
He was briefly mentioned when he went into TARDIS, but yeah, he was not actually seen in the episode.
That was because the production crew could not afford to take the K9 team with them to Paris.
Yeah, that kind of figures.
K9 team, wow.
Yeah, they had an entire team devoted to trying to get that stupid little mechanical mutt running.
When you think of the toys, I don't know about you, Randy, but the toys that my generation grew up with, me and Matt, with like the remote control stuff, I can just imagine I can imagine being slightly unwieldy, but it would still be perfectly manageable with one person. As not the case in the late 70s.
Yeah, K9 was actually remote control in those days. The problem was, kept breaking.
Kept breaking. The frequency would constantly tamper with other bits of filming equipment, so they would also have to constantly try for a different frequency. That, and also the many different ways that they could use K9, because since the remote control one didn't always work, they also had the track one too, with a pull-along rope that could be hidden below camera level.
Yeah. And the actors hated working with K9 because of the size of K9. To get their actor's face and the dog in the shot, they all had to bend down and talk to the dog.
Even Tom Baker was very public about admittedly not being a big fan of K9, but he understood that the kids loved him.
Mm-hmm.
So he went with it for at least a good couple of years.
Yep. Yeah, K9 started in I think the second season of Leela.
Actually, no, the first season.
Was it the first season? I thought it was the first episode in the second season.
I could have sworn it was like within an episode or two of her joining with Tom. If not the same episode.
I didn't think
so.
For
sure. I would have to go back and look again. But I remember it not being too terribly long after she joined with Tom.
Well, you know what? I'm looking. The Invisible Enemy started season 15, whereas Talons of Wang Chang ended season 14. So, yes. Well, technically, Leela was only there for a season and a half, so it was the first half season, and then K9 came up second in season 15, and was with Leela for 5 serials until Leela ended, and then K9 was in the next season for 6. Then this season, then the season after they got rid of him.
Yeah, he ran into the water or something, didn't he?
They got rid of, well...
No, he opted to stay with Romana in E-Space at the end.
Oh, that's right, that one did, yeah.
That was the last one. So, technically, there was Mark III for Sarah. They tried to start a spin-off series with that.
So basically, Tom just made a bunch of canines and gave them out to companions as parting gifts.
No, just the one, as far as we're aware.
I thought, well, 2 that we just described, I thought he left one on Gallifrey.
Yes, they chose... He didn't leave them with companions. They chose to stay.
Yes.
Oh.
The canine units are self-sufficient and self-thinking, so they very much had their own opinions on things, too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see, that's not something that carried over into the RTD K9, at least not in its Doctor Who appearances. I don't know about
that. They didn't really cover that particular part of K9, no.
No. K9,
although he did sacrifice himself, technically, towards the end of the episode.
He was generally a subservient, but, yeah,
when asked to, he could throw out his opinion, too.
K9 was damaged and had to remain in E-Space. But the K9 on Gallifrey chose to remain with the Mistress.
And the one that went off for the spin-off, the first spin-off?
That was a gift. That one deliberately was a gift from the 4th Doctor to Sarah Jane as an apology for essentially ditching her.
Or at least that's supposedly what we were told during that episode.
Yeah, that was right before he had gotten the recall to go to Gallifrey for the Deadly Assassin thing, and basically said, "Okay, this is your stop. You get off now." Out and basically kind of rushed her out and took off without so much as a "by your leave," you know. So eventually, he got around to giving her a canine as an apology, and then bumped into her 6 regenerations later.
And again, I would reiterate that's at least what we were told during this special.
So was she let off of the show specifically so that Baker could prove he could hold it on his own, or did she have other reasons for leaving? He's like, wait, don't give me a companion.
Contractually at that point.
Oh, okay.
I'm not 100% certain, but I'd never heard anything about a dispute or anything behind the production.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't remember any ill will or anything about her leaving. She just decided it was time to go.
Okay. Yeah. Like, yeah, and then like if she was forced off the show because of the Doctor's ego, I imagine something would have gotten out about someone being unhappy. So.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's no mention of it, so.
I suspect half season before she told him that she was ready to move on, and they said, "Okay, we'll write you an ending," and that's the way it kind of came out.
Well, okay, he has no companions, so let's make a story where it's just him.
Well, that was Tom's pitching in on that one.
I'm seeing here that if I'm looking at this right, that K9 was not in Destiny either. Was there a particular reason for that, or?
In Destiny?
Oh.
Is that 104? I think that's 104.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Destiny.
Doctor's still repairing K9.
Ah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, K9 was also frequently down in the actual plot too.
Yeah, he was. That was.
Well, he was probably broken in the actual plot because he was broken behind the scenes, and
maybe.
Yeah.
It was a good enough excuse.
Because I remember like telling K9 to say and then the voice came out he's like, got bronchitis. How does a robot get bronchitis?
Yeah, that was in a later one. This one, he was doing some minor fixes because he just started the thing up for the first time. Or he he was repairing it after it got damaged in the last serial, and he put the robot brain in backwards, I think.
I think by this tangent we've pretty much established that we're done with City of Death. Is that about right?
Well,
I guess.
For our final thoughts and ratings.
True.
Mm-hmm. So, final thoughts.
I'm gonna go there and say probably a 3 out of 5. I would say this was an average to maybe average to good episode. There was like I said, nothing spectacular that really wowed me, like, oh wow, this is something that I want to give a high rating to, that I would really recommend to people. But at the same time, it's not something where, if someone who had never seen the show picked it up and was like, hey, should I watch this? But why not? It's not tremendously good, but not a bad episode either.
All right, Matt.
I guess final thoughts. I liked the episode. I liked it quite fine. And actually, now that you brought up the randomizer, it's like, oh, I guess there is a few plot holes. But if you don't remember that while watching it, it's a perfectly fine episode. And yeah, the suspension with the alien could have been improved by holding off on the reveal until a later episode. But meh, they did something. They wanted to do something. They wanted to make it bigger than, I guess, the original cliffhanger or something. So, but otherwise, in general, not a bad episode. Definitely one that I still remembered even well after I had watched Tom Baker's stuff and moved on to other things. So, yeah, I would declare this a pretty good episode, even for the downward spiral that Tom Baker was about to encounter soon after this with Shada, and then the next season, which apparently was against his will. But outside of that, yeah, I quite like this episode. It's a memorable one too.
Your rating?
My rating, I'd at least give it a 4.
All right. So we have a 3 and a 4. Well, I'm actually going to split the difference here and go 3.5. I had actually came into this episode expecting to give it a 5 because this was one of my favorite episodes. But yeah, after writing it, or after, being a writer now myself and going back and looking at it, I'm looking at it and going, I'm seeing ways that I could have written it better. That's a little egocentrical of me, I know, but just like I said, dragging that off to the further on would have heightened the drama and made it a little bit more of a thriller kind of, or suspense, sort of a mystery of how is he doing this, what's going on. I mean, as much as you can. I mean, it's aliens, it's Doctor Who. Go figure. But,
Sure, but as it is, I don't think the particular answer to the mystery is really anything that someone could have guessed without having it explained to them either.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, it has its pluses. The John Cleese scene really, of course,
Just caps it at the end, yeah.
yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's basically the last hurrah for Tom Baker in control era because the rest of this season is not that hot. Shada would have probably been the high point, but of course never really got aired.
Until much, much later, and one of them narrated by Tom himself.
Yes, but never aired completed.
Mm-hmm. That would actually be an awesome thing. Do a recreation of that with animation.
Would be nice, but probably won't see it. Actually, we kind of did, but they used the 8th Doctor instead of the 4th. Still not as good. Anyway, so I'm going to say it actually winds up to be 3.5. Yeah, also the whole thing about the Mona Lisa, which I actually didn't get back on the topic of. The Mona Lisa is actually usually kept in a box under special lights that you have to view, so that the lights don't stop it from, or the lights are supposed to stop it from deteriorating.
So that it stops the color fading and
So
everything else. Yeah.
it's pretty clear that they definitely didn't go to the actual museum when when making the set for this.
Yeah, and by the way, the fact that you guys don't know how to say Louvre, you're both Philistines.
I'm not
Just
French.
saying.
Well, there's also the fact that even a French word that I think I can pronounce, when I pronounce it to someone who knows even a little bit of French, they tell me I'm an idiot and shouldn't speak. So,
That's what you get for trying to talk to French people.
I don't say hello in French. I don't count in French. In theory, I know those.
And then there's somebody who speaks French among the four people watching this and will smack us for it.
Yeah, I just don't have the tongue for the French method of pronunciation.
Because we actually do have apparently 4 viewers. I would assume there's at least one extra viewer because I'm watching it. Randy's watching.
I was gonna say if that counts you, Matt, then that means there's us plus one person who randomly found it on Twitch or Twitter.
Hi, random one person. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Actually, we can still see the chat even if we're not signed in, right?
Yeah, I believe you can.
Yeah. Because I'm seeing it as blank, but there might actually be words there that I
No, there's no words yet.
Okay, that's kind of meta, and you're going to break Twitch if you don't get off that screen. You're going to break Twitch.
Oh.
It's just going to keep going, and it's going to shatter.
Ooh, recursion. We aren't talking about Castrovalva yet, Matt.
We'll get there, we'll get there. So,
yeah,
average is 3.5.
So average is out to 3.5.
I could just see Twitch just try to keep updating it to the point where it ends up just like breaking the stream and not showing anything.
Matt, stop before you break the internet.
I've broken the internet once.
I
was in a chat room. Me and the other guy were both moderators of the chat. We banned each other at the exact same time. What happened was, first the chat froze for 2 minutes. Next thing we knew, everybody in the room had been thrown out.
Hurrah!
Like the code could not handle somebody who had already been kicked out of the chat kicking somebody else out of the chat at the same time. I just shut the whole thing down.
Brilliant.
You caused the computer to mentally implode, and we're not watching the invasion. And I'm the only one who has. Apparently.
I think of a computer mentally imploding. I think of Return of the Archons.
No, computers mentally imploding is a definite thing that happened. In
it's a sci-fi trope. When there's a computer, you don't know how to deal with it. You turn it on itself.
Yeah, exactly. It was really Kirk should be the codifier for that, because Kirk did it so many times.
Apparently, most evil dictator computers are made by Microsoft,
and run on either Windows 8 or Vista.
I don't know. I haven't seen a version of Windows that I couldn't coax to a blue screen.
Could be worse. Could be.
So,
Or it could be ME. Yeah. Or 2000.
2000
I like
as
2000.
bad as ME.
I
It had
refuse
problems.
to
from what I
use.
heard.
I refuse to use anything other than 2000 until finally, like, after Vista came out, right, like, basically when they announced Windows 7, I was like, fine, I'll try, not Vista, but XP. That was when I finally gave in and got a computer with XP.
Yeah,
Until then, I was
XP is fine.
2000.
Windows 7 is fine. Avoid Vista. 8 is crap.
8, I keep hearing
2000
is
is
rubbish.
okay. It just had compatibility issues because most people are still using 95, 98 based apps at the time. And
Well, who doesn't want to keep using 98, 95 apps? Because, quite frankly, those games are awesome.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, as far as I could tell, 2000 and 98 were the same thing, except 2000 was more, had, I think, more capabilities.
it was, well, no, one was based off of the Windows existing technology and one was based off of Windows NT, which was meant for networking servers. And we are off topic here.
Massively off topic, and we probably should stop filming by about this point.
Yes, I think we're done here. We give a rating. Just a 3 and a 5. Join
I
us.
just
Are we
realized
going
that-
to actually try to get the first episode reviewed next week?
I think so. That would be 6 days after the episode's release. Can we all get that done?
that should be safe time.
I'm watching. Yeah, I'm either watching it when it airs or by the end of tomorrow night, and
I'll be
pretty
watching
sure
it
you're the
tomorrow
same.
night, and then I'll probably have it.
You won't be able to
once.
sleep. Yeah, it's like you won't be able to sleep until you've watched it. So at least unless that's changed.
Shouldn't.
Side note though, I did just finally change my XP computer from having the 2000 version of the start menu to the XP version. I didn't realize I still had it set that way. So I'm
Years after it came out.
I've finally accepted XP.
So you're just kind of wallowing in obsolescence.
Wait till you hit Windows 7, man. It's gonna blow your brain.
He won't get
I do
to
have-
until 2020.
The computer I Skype on is Windows 7, but I am still playing PS1 games on a PS2.
Everyone
just
knows that.
got
I
rid of
play
my
PS1 on a PS3, so yeah.
And I just got rid of my PS1 games.
I did just finally introduce myself to Generation 3 of Pokemon. That's I think that's about 10 years old now. I'll own my first Blu-ray in about 5 or 6 years, probably.
Yeah, I still don't own any Blu-rays. I almost bought a Blu-ray, but I kind of ran out of funds at the
Technically,
time.
Arcon owns a Blu-ray.
Well, I mean an actual
I
Blu-ray
did-
disc.
That's what I mean.
I did just recently buy a bunch of Star Trek movies on VHS.
Why?
Because
they were
they
dirt
were
cheap.
because they were $1 at the thrift store.
There's a reason I moved my Star Trek movie collection to DVD as soon as possible, and that was the fact that I didn't have to actually replace any of them again.
Well,
I
it was also
wore my Star
the
Trek tapes out.
it was also the box set with the picture of the Enterprise on the side.
I remember that one.
So you had to have the only problem is whoever donated it that it ended up to the thrift store did not include the motion picture, or either that or somebody bought it separately. And
Are we still
one of those.
recording?
Yes.
Join us next week as we go even further off the rails.
Nerds in
But-
space.
and they're going to break quit. No.